should be live. I think I'm live. Hi guys. Go ahead and let me know in the chat when you can hear me. There's of course a delay. Hi Dustin. All right, so hopefully, let me see their sound. Yes, I am right on. Okay, so hopefully you guys have watched part 1 of this rabbit hole. If you haven't, you're probably going to be pretty lost. It's linked below this video. We're going to be diving deeper into, hi, Spiritual Warrior 333. She can hear me. Perfect. We are going to be diving deeper into concepts that we dove into in that video that we were kind of tying all together. And then immediately after, hi Kylie, immediately after said video, while laying there up super late at night because I'm still wired from this video, I watched the Andromeda strain and then dove back in. And then in the coming weeks that followed, like over this past month, other things have come to light. And so this is just a rabbit hole video. It's kind of loose. We're just going to go. If you've been following along with my stories on Instagram, you've seen a lot of this already, but obviously I'm going to tie it together and expand on it. I think that's what this little series is just going to be. You know, my stories over on Instagram are so shadow banned. It's ridiculous. Like, sometimes only like 50 people see my stories. And I have like over 20,000 followers. I am so shadow banned over there. But those of you who do manage to see those, you probably know, like, I pop off on random, I just stumble into rabbit holes all the time. And you know, of course, I'll post something about it in the stories or on Discord for the Patreon members, or I go like talk Eddie's ear off about it, and he's always like, you should make a video about this. And if I made it, I can't make that many videos. I don't want to do that. I don't want to make all these separate videos. When I feel like I have a little stream going, I'm just going to combine it together into one large rabbit hole. That seems to be how I work best, which is like hyper focus and then info dump and then rest for a while because it takes a lot out of you. I can't, this is the platform. This is the way we're going to have to do it. So what I'm getting at here is that this video is probably going to be very long. If you need to come back and watch it in like segments, that's fine. I found it all in segments and I've like kind of tied it together. Kylie says she's currently watching the moonrise and I'm on Northern Lights watch. Oh, fun. Where are you at? What latitude are you at? Okay. Let's dive in. So, you guys, everything is just so connected. It's such a trip. I'm going to share my screen. Oh wait, I have to go over here first. And I have a bunch of slides and we're just going to go a whole bunch of places. I have some notes. Oh wait, I pulled a card first. So I pulled an archetype card with the goal in mind of zeroing in on like an archetypal lens with which to like view this information, but also like the archetype that's coming through most strongly through this information. I did this with the last video too. And oh, she's in Ohio. Apparently there's a chance of seeing it in a lot of northern states. I heard about that. Yeah. So rad. Not that you'll be able to probably get any pictures, but if you do, post them on Discord so we can see. So the card that came out was the Warrior. And this immediately made sense to me for a multitude of reasons. One, we are going to be kind of diving into this concept of this mystery school war that, I've touched on it in the past. We're going to dive into deeper here tonight. I always mention the dark journalist and his research. He does a fabulous job of kind of explaining the politics behind it and all that stuff that I just don't even get. I'm really good at like pattern recognition and like sensing the fuckery, but I really have no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to most of these subjects. I stumble in these rabbit holes and then things piece together, and then I am sharing with you, we are all going to be on the same page here after this video. You're going to know about as much as I know. But this concept of this like warring mystery school stream that has kind of been warring for a very, very long time, but also kind of working together. But right now that like war between ideologies is really coming through very strongly, and we're seeing it play out with all these very big stunts, many of which we'll talk about here tonight, and many of which we talked about in the last video, part 1 of this. But then also I immediately thought of, us as the warrior, as some sort of third party independent warrior who's here to fight for, truth and honor and dignity and freedom and all of these things. So we're simultaneously like in this war, but we ourselves are, we're not powerless. When you see how deep the fuckery really runs, sometimes you can get very disillusioned and like your optimism level can just plummet. I have Jupiter retrograde in my chart. I can go from like being the most optimistic person in the world to like, we're all fucked. It doesn't matter anyway. You know what I mean? Like in a second, I can go from that in a second. But this card really spoke to me about remembering that we are not powerless. The reason why they hide these rituals, the reason why they have to do these giant, complicated ass fucking spells in the first place is to be able to harness this like occult energy to be able to, one, keep us under a spell of confusion and illusion and mind control, but also to manifest their agendas into being. And they have to keep it hidden and secret because they want us all signing on to it. The Lionsgate is a great example, feeding our energy into it, But once we can see, we can break free and we can reclaim the power that our inner warrior holds. We are not powerless. So I'm going to go ahead and read this from the book. I like to do this in the beginning, gives people a chance to hop in here before I start diving into all this stuff. Hi, Miko. She says, I have been on a huge dark journalist binge over the past couple weeks. Yes, go catch up on his last couple of videos. We're going to touch on the Trump stuff. The man he's brilliant. He just must read all day long. Like, I already feel like I do a lot. And the man is brilliant. He's brilliant. She says, I'm reading a lot of Blavatsky and Steiner. She says, I'm all light and love, laying on a bed of casual nihilism. Yeah, me too. Oh man, except for I might be more nihilism and laying on the bed of like love and light. Hi Mello. She says, I watched almost all of his videos from the past year. He's amazing. Yeah, I usually fall asleep before the end. I have to like catch it in multiple parts because he's long-winded like me, which is what I like. I don't even watch short videos. Okay, so in theory, Eddie gives me great advice all the time that I never take and that I regret not taking later. But he always says I should be making like videos on all these topics. And this is another one of his advices that I'm not going to take, but I don't think I'm going to regret it. But his thing is, all these different subjects. And in short videos, it doesn't give you enough time to tie the puzzle pieces together, which is ultimately what I think I'm here to do. And so long formatted videos need to do it. And Dark Journalist seems to be doing the same thing. I vibe with him. Like, his long rants are brilliant. The man's brilliant. Big fan. I'm a big fan. Okay, so let me read this from the book. The warrior, the samurai, the soldier, the advocate. We often envision the warrior as an armored figure with a sword in hand, moving blindly toward battle. Yet, the deeper aspects of this archetype bring us face to face with death itself. The warrior stands precariously at the edge of life and death, trusting the eternal to guide the sword's blade. The warrior's work requires presence, alignment, and purpose. If and when the warrior loses its center, meaningless confrontations and violence are their default response. When this card appears, it is important to question the battle at hand. It is likely a great one, with deep roots and long-standing tensions. Wow, this card is on point too. That's literally where we're going tonight. I didn't read this yet. The actions you take will stay with you long after the dust settles. So choose wisely, brave one, as you draw your sword, realign with the eternal wisdom within. Then surrender to the battle. Without a true purpose, manifesto, or oath, the warrior is lost. What do you stand for? What are you willing to rise in the name of? Write it all out. Be careful, as the warrior implies war. I'm going to talk about how that's also kind of where we're headed, and it's probably going to involve space. The two go hand in hand. Those who defeat others are strong. Those who defeat themselves are mighty. And I also want to talk about like the implications of war and like the spiritual implications of a war in space. At least a conscious war in space. I mean, I'm sure they're already doing stuff up there, but like that the public is aware of. Okay, that card was super on point. That deck, I don't even use the normal tarot anymore. I use that deck for all my clients and this other deck. Okay. Everybody loves the Dark Journalist, the long-winded info. Yeah, I actually, every subject I want to look up, I always go to the YouTube settings and I turn it to like 20 minutes and over, because I'm convinced if you can't talk about something long enough, like you don't actually really know anything about it. Okay, let's share my screen and hop over here and dive in. This is the new thumbnail for part 2. We are actually going to talk about literally every single picture on here as we get in and all this stuff over here. So I'm not going to talk about it now. We're just going to dive right in. Okay, I always forget this part, so I have to literally put the slide in here. Can you please like this video and subscribe to my channel? If you're watching this later, can you just put a comment down below for the algorithm? Send it to a friend. Send them part 1 and part 2. This is being done on YouTube, but I have several videos throughout the month that I do for every moon video, where I like kind of treat the moon as a rabbit hole and I dive into all of the ins and outs of the moon. One of those moon videos actually led me down one of the rabbit holes we're going to talk about here tonight. But if you're interested in joining my Patreon, it's a sliding scale, meaning you can pay whatever you want and get access to all the videos. All the tiers have access to it. So whether you're the $3 tier or the $33 tier, you have access to all the videos. It's just, I ask that you pay like whatever you feel like you can afford, It really does help me be able to, feed myself and do what I do. I'm also booking clients for September, but I only have a couple of spots left, and my website is linked below if you want to book. And if you're a returning client, there's a discount. And if you're a Patreon member, there is a 33% off discount code that you can add to that other discount, which makes it much, much cheaper. And you can find that over on Discord, or you can message me and I'll send it to you. Okay. So this rabbit hole, like, it never ended. Once I finished the last live and I lay down afterwards, I started watching the Andromeda Strain movie, and I was pulled immediately back into the rabbit hole. So this is where it continues, and we're going to continue on. First, I was like, oh yeah, I wanted to talk about what deck. Mela says, what deck? It is called the Archetypes deck from the Wild Unknown. It's like little circles. The company is the Wild Unknown, and it's the Archetypes deck. They have a new deck that just came out that looks really good too. I want that one. Okay, so first I was like, oh, that's right. I wanted to talk about the artwork on the cover of the Andromeda Strain. And so most of what we're going to look at here are clips of my stories from Instagram, right? And so these are a couple of screenshots of the artwork. This is the original cover. And I wrote here, this is the original art. It's really giving me space fence vibes, with the earth being kind of like encased with what looks like binary code, but it's not binary because there are more than just 0101. It has numbers sequencing, but this sort of like artificial interface laid over the earth and the human body as well. I wrote here, this really speaks very strongly, the symbolism here. This book was released in 1969. Really speaks very strongly to this sort of transhumanist agenda. And we're going to talk here about how this guy, this author, Michael Crichton, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing wrong, is like pretty much royalty when it comes to the book world, the realm of film and television. He's written tons of scripts, including Jurassic Park. He wrote the book for Jurassic Park as well. Directed tons of movies, worked with tons of famous people, and he's responsible for creating this entire genre known as like techno-thrillers. When we see AI taking over like all of the movies we see now, he's responsible for that. He even wrote Westworld, which is about that as well, and HBO just made a show about. So I wrote here, this speaks very much to like, you know, Rudolf Steiner's concept of Ahriman, you know, these like AI incarnation, the eighth sphere. A lot of times we think of that as like robots walking around, but like this tale and much of his other works speak more of like an invasion of nanotechnology and artificial intelligence, but on a very small scale. Like this is a virus, right? But it's a virus that my cats woke up. Try not to give them nightmares. A virus that invades and is an intelligent alien life form. So we'll touch on that more here, but I just wanted to really point out the symbolism of this book. What did I write here? I wrote, obviously you're only going to know what I'm talking about if you watch the last live. And also to watch the Shuman Resonance Frequency rabbit hole video that I did with Sharon about this time last year. I also linked that down below. If you haven't watched that, definitely watch that. And we touch very heavily on this concept of the eighth sphere, the space fence, this sort of like controlling consciousness overlay, right? So it says here that The Andromeda Strain is a 1969 techno-thriller novel by this dude. His first novel under his own name. He wrote a ton of things under like pseudonyms and other names. But this is the first one under his name and the one he's most famous for. It's written as a report documenting the efforts of a team of scientists investigating the outbreak of a deadly extraterrestrial microorganism. So we're going to go over to the webpage, but before we do, I want to just finish these other slides. I should have put it at the end. So, oh yeah, I guess we'll do that because this is more about the book than the movie. We'll touch on that. Okay, so I want to point out a couple things about this fucking guy. Okay, so, okay. This book and this storyline is rooted in this entire transhumanist agenda that infiltrated through literature and movies and whatnot, right? He's responsible for starting it. That original book was written in 1969. This book is the sequel to the first book. This book was released in 2019. The paperback edition came out a couple of months after COVID, and many people are saying like, oh, this book predicted COVID. It didn't predict COVID. It was released along with COVID. What's interesting is that the sequel was released in 2019, 2020, and it was like co-written by this other guy. What's this other guy's name? Daniel Wilson, after this guy's death. So this is the 19th novel written under Creton's name. And it's the fourth novel to be published after his death. He actually died in 2008, and they're still releasing books under his name. That, from what I gather, from what I've read, he had like partially written before his death and then was like completed. So this one is very interesting. The plot of this movie and this guy, this writer. Okay, let's go here. So this does a really good job of kind of summarizing the background of these two guys on Amazon for the book. It says here that the original author wrote many things. Terminal Man, The Great Train Robbery, Jurassic Park, Sphere, Disclosure, Prey, State of Fear, Next, Dragon Teeth, so many movies, television shows. It's a lot. We'll get to his Wikipedia here in a second. He's like #1 New York Times bestselling author. He's won a ton of awards. He's embedded in all of the different industries, but very rooted in science and technology. So he's obviously part of some sort of pyramidal structure, some sort of society. We'll see here in a second how he graduated from Harvard. Well, here, does it say it here? His books have sold more than 200 million copies worldwide. They've been translated into 40 languages. He wrote and directed Westworld and all these other things, including the television series ER, because he's also a doctor. He's like focused on biotechnology. He's well educated in the technological scientific realm and also in the medical field. He has degrees in both. I guess I don't say much about him, but what I wanted to point out is this guy, the guy who co-wrote the book with him, what his like specialties are. He is a Cherokee citizen and the author of New York Times best-selling author Robo Apocalypse and its sequel Robo Genesis. I didn't look up the plots of these two books, but I think we can gather it has to do with robots taking over the world and destroying it and rebirthing it as to something else, with a Genesis perhaps. Should be fun. As well as a whole bunch of other books. He recently wrote The Earth 2 Society, a comic book series for DC Comics. and he earned his PhD in robotics from Carnegie Mellon University, as well as a master's degree in artificial intelligence and robotics. He published over a dozen scientific papers and holds 4 patents. He lives in Portland, Oregon. So that's interesting. Is this the one where I have his thing here? Yeah. Okay. So this guy, I tried to look and see, because sometimes it's pretty easy and you can just find a picture of a dude wearing a Masonic apron or, wearing a ring or something like that. Sometimes it's pretty easy to pinpoint someone's affiliation with an occult order. You know what I mean? This guy, with everybody he knows and how big he got, he's affiliated with someone somewhere. He definitely went to Harvard, and he was initiated into a fraternity there, and that's usually the entryway into secret orders. Okay, let me see what you guys are saying. Fascinated with the Andromeda Strain movie when I was young. Haven't seen it in like 20 years. Yeah, I hadn't seen it in a really long time either. And with today's lens, it's such a trip. We're going to look at some scenes from that in a second. She says, definitely a Matrix overlay. If you guys haven't seen the newest season of the Westworld, oh my God, please do. You will get more predictive Yeah, I can't watch that show. I just gave my dad my HBO password the other day, and he's like, oh my God, are you watching Westworld? I'm like, no. Okay, so the dude went to Harvard, right? He's all into these techno-thrillers, which is usually about catastrophe and like our creations getting loose and destroying us in the process, right? I would love to read so much of this, but we're gonna have to like move on. But there was so much that stood out to me. I always have these grandiose plans of what I wanted to discuss here. But, he's the fact that they use this concept of the Centaurus strain and how very closely tied the Andromeda strain is. Even the Muggles have been tying the Andromeda strain story to COVID since the beginning. This was May 15th, 2020. This is from the Sci-Fi Channel. And they're talking about how his stories literally mirror this, and they're even talking about how the paperback is about to come out. It was like a press release for this story. The paperback of that new sequel is the plot of that revolves around brain AI interfaces, nanotechnology, the mutation of the Andromeda strain, and AI. It revolves very strongly around artificial intelligence, much more than, why isn't this plugged in? My phone's about to die. Much more than the first one. The first one, it spoke about how the virus was like growing and intelligent, but it didn't in the original movie. I don't know about the book because I haven't read the book, but in the original movie, it didn't specifically say that it was technological in nature, but the sequels definitely lean into that. And normies have been pinpointing how these two mirror each other so much. So the fact that they then decided to name it the Centaurus strain, and in the last video we talked about how that naming process was very suspicious. I find it interesting. But anyway, he's like the father of this whole science fiction genre that involves the creation of artificial intelligence and the destruction of the human race in the process. But he also does stuff with like cloning and all kinds of stuff as well. Okay, I would have loved to have read that whole thing, and I highly recommend going and reading some of these articles because you can find out a lot about this guy. So yeah, he went to Harvard. He is an author, a film producer, a film director, a TV producer. He's worked with everybody. He's worked with everybody from Spielberg to like you name it. And he's won so many awards, and he's very rooted in like cybernetics, nanotechnology, and real science and real military. What's the word I'm looking for? Like jargon, I guess. Like his books are known for floating these stories as real events and often citing real science in order to back this up, and sometimes fabricating science but making it look real in order to back it up. And as we can see by just diving into him as a person and everybody that he is affiliated with, we can see that he's deeply embedded in the powers that be, I guess. But he does have some like weird views when it comes to like global warming. He's thinks that it's not caused by humans, and I guess there was like some big scandal with him and the environmentalists because of this. He's definitely buddies with Bush. Has stood up for him a couple of times. So he graduated from Harvard, and usually Harvard and Yale people, they're like kind of rivals, but they also kind of work together. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was like initiated into Skull and Bones like later after college, you know. And we are going to talk about how Skull and Bones is making an appearance here later tonight. Okay, due to suspicious, we'll get there in a second. This is about the new one that came out in 2019, 2020. It just says here, The Andromeda Strain by that dude is a classic science fiction novel. When it was published in 1969, it created the techno-thriller genre, something that didn't exist prior to that. And looking through Techno-ology, whatever that says, website, it's the first work of fiction where robots were used for a biological outbreak. 51 years later, Daniel H. Wilson, the author of the more recent classic Robo-Apocalypse, has written an authorized sequel, The Andromeda Strain. It is fast-paced in the same military after-action report style writing, and the character uses a lot of robots in realistic ways, especially as the protagonist is James Stone, the son of Jeremy Stone, from the Project Wildfire team from the first movie. Or novel. And he is a roboticist. There's even a surprise reveal near the end of the novel. Overall, it's a great one, recommended both for robot fans and those who like hard science thrillers. It's also a great book for exploring the brain-machine interfaces. It's lovely. Okay, we could dive into him, but we're done. We're gonna move on. We'll be here forever. Okay, so I decided I was going to watch the movie. And immediately I saw the symbolism of the book cover, and then the difference here with, this is a new movie poster for the old movie, but it's a new rendition. We'll look at the old movie poster in a second. And I immediately was like, okay, well, this looks very CERN like to me, and also I'm seeing this like triangle symbolism. Okay, pretty interesting. And by the way, you can't stream this movie for free anywhere. I had to rent it, which I wasn't happy about, but I dove in. This is the original movie poster. And I realized that Andromeda is the closest galaxy to Earth, and Centaurus, Alpha Centauri, the main star in the constellation Centaurus, is the closest star to Earth. So I think that's why they picked Centaurus. They couldn't straight up say, we're calling the new variant the Andromeda strain. They couldn't straight up do that. So they were like, okay, well, Andromeda is the closest galaxy. We'll just do the closest star. And then that's Centaurus. It's Alpha Centauri. So I think that's why that got picked. And then obviously we notice here this hexagonal symbolism, which we'll see later in the movie. But this hexagon symbolism is obviously connected to the number 6, but also this concept of graphene oxide, which is believed to be what is inside of the UNOs and what is used by the nanotechnology to build this sort of interface within our bodies in order to make us compatible with this new AI dimension that is being layered upon our consciousness through 5G, through all of these different technological advances we see unfolding before our eyes, right? So I wrote here that the movie portrays the story as actual real events, just like the book did. And he had a lot of like contracts with military personnel, universities, different things like that. Like he knew what was up. The new cutting edge technologies like this guy knew about. But it says here this film concerns a 4-day history of a major American scientific crisis. We received the generous help of many people attached to Project Scoop at Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is one of the Air Force bases believed to be very strongly tied to the UFO file, and the Wildfire Laboratory in Flat Rock, Nevada. They encouraged us to tell the story accurately and in detail. I find this interesting because it says here in the movie that this base is at Flat Rock, Nevada, but I believe in the book they say it's New Mexico. So they changed the location for the movie, which I find interesting. It says the documents presented here are soon to be made public. They do not in any way jeopardize the national security. So then I noticed something very interesting. This is from the movie. It says that this is where the secret underground base is in the Andromeda strain. So the plot of the Andromeda strain is an unknown alien life form crashes to Earth. I think it's on a meteor. No, it's on a satellite. Ooh, interesting that ours is being fed to us through 5G satellites and infrastructure. But anyway, some unknown virus crashes to Earth on a satellite. And it causes either insanity and then death, or just straight up death. And it's from blood clots. The people's blood clots and they die. And this happens out in a town. And these government agents that work at this wildfire secret base, that's kind of like an Area 51 type of a thing underground in this area of Nevada, they are sent out to go investigate why all these people in this town are dying. And they're sent out in hazmat suits, and they're already like well versed in bio warfare and space and AI and aliens. That's like kind of their jam at this location. And so they're sent out to see why all these people are dying at this town, and they bring back a sample and they study it and they figure out a bunch of different things about it. And it eventually is, the place almost explodes. He stops it from exploding, but, it does explode. And a lot of people die. And there's a survivor. And what survives at the end is also the Andromeda strain. It goes out into the atmosphere and somehow it becomes benign in the end of the first movie. But then in the second book that is written in 2020, it is like mutated in the rainforest and it comes back to life. And now they have all this nanotechnology and all these things that they're going to save us with. Okay, so what I noticed was that the secret underground base that the Andromeda strain is released from, brought into, and then released from, is in the same area of Nevada as Hoover Dam. I was like, are you for real? I was like, I knew these rabbit holes were connected. The location of the invasion of the Andromeda strain is in southern Nevada, the same area as the Hoover Dam, like literally the exact same area. And it's called, this base is called Wildfire, and they just had a fire at the Hoover Dam. So I think all these different things are ways of kind of connecting these current archetypes. Movies are our current myth, right? These stories are honestly the only myths a lot of these Hollywood cult know, although a lot of them are well versed in the occult and mythology, but not all of them. So a lot of them use these more modern myths to cast their spells, apparently. What was I going to grab? I was going to grab something. Say something. I don't know. Okay. Anything else I want to say here? There was something. What was it? I don't know. We'll move on. Okay. So this underground base in the Andromeda strain movie seems to perhaps be referencing the underground base that's believed to be under the Hoover Dam, which we touched on a little bit in the last video, and we're going to touch on more in a second. But this underground base is focused on the study of bioweapons and space, UFOs, aliens. It's completely ran by AI computers. Like everything here is fully automated, computerized, and self-regulating, which is what's rumored to be under the Hoover Dam, some sort of like huge machine, whether it's a D-wave computer, some sort of CERN particle accelerator, a Tesla death ray, who knows? Something seems to be under there. This underground system is fitted with a self-detonating atomic bomb, which perhaps could be what's under there. A lot of my followers, or a couple people, were mentioning in comments after this last video that other dams were used to help power the development of atomic weaponry. I wrote here the Hoover Dam, and this is not a conspiracy. This is actually known, and you can watch a documentary made by the dam themselves about this. But the Hoover Dam has a 4-story building inside of it that we discussed in the last live. I wrote here, might it also have an underground system? Some say that it's Area 52 and it's connected underground to Area 51 through a tunnel system. Might that be what they are referencing here in this movie? The movie is from 1971. The book is from 1969. And I Googled to see when graphene oxide was first discovered, and it was in the 1800s. And by the 60s and 70s, they were already using it for these sort of concepts. Okay, so this is a picture from the movie itself of the Andromeda strain. And it's a growing interlace of hexagonal structures. I wrote an invasion of tiny alien consciousness that continues to grow inside the body, creating blood clots and eventual death. And it has a hexagonal structure. Does this sound familiar? And I wrote here, obviously this is a picture of graphene oxide. This is not something I'm going to dive into deeper here. If you're like, yo, what's graphene oxide? Come over to Discord. We have a bunch of videos that explain it, but it is this solution that is being injected into people as we speak for the goal of ultimately connecting them to AI intelligence. And that is not a conspiracy. Many people in the transhumanist realm will speak about this openly and have been injecting themselves with graphene for a very long time in order to do this and make themselves more conductive. But you can see how it looks very similar. And this too is self-building. This is a clip from the movie Take Us to Your Leader, and it's these tiny little creatures. You know, they have us focused on like UFOs and like greys and reptilians and all these aliens that are gonna come from inner Earth or freaking the fourth dimension or whatever fucking shit they say. Everybody's got their shit. This is where the alien invasion is coming from. I wrote over here, you know, humans might be inventing AI. Like, we might be inventing artificial intelligence and robots and computers and algorithms. And yeah, but simultaneously, we're also inventing the technology that is going to let a foreign AI that was created by somebody outside of Earth or our dimension entirely, who knows, into our realm to merge with our consciousness. So we're simultaneously seeing ourselves, humanity, create these artificial intelligence machines and simultaneously creating the technology that lets a consciousness from beyond in as well. We're seeing this happen simultaneously. And this, the micro level, the nano level, is where it's going to be coming from. And this is not talked about enough. Okay. I see you guys in here. Okay. Miko says he's definitely in some mystery school. He's in something. I don't know what. I tried to find something. I couldn't find much. But just his acquaintances. You don't know all those people and get into all those places without being connected to something. And we'll see how the Masons like him and use his symbology here in a second when we continue on through these slides. So my guess he's a Mason or Skull and Bones, because they seem to work together. If you guys haven't seen we already said that. He's definitely... Centaur is also a chimera, which is what happens when you blend the DNA, RNA, force mutation, and put nanotechnology, chimera, a centaur. Yes, I said that in the last video too, and I said, isn't it interesting that everybody's being injected with the monkeypox vaccine right now? The newest season of Westworld starts at the... Are you serious, Miko? She says the newest season of Westworld starts at the Hoover Dam, with it being brought to hold the world's largest servers run by water power. I literally said in the last video that I think they have a D-Wave computer there. I don't think they have a CERN technology like this is about to say. I think that they have a D-Wave computer. That's fucking crazy. It starts at Hoover Dam. What date did they launch that new season of Westworld? Can you Google that and let me know? I have some dates here. Oh, that's what I was going to look at, was those dates. Okay. To run the world's largest AI, she says. Holy shit, makes so much sense. I'm telling you, you should give it a chance just to see what they're up to. In the show, it powers and cools massive servers. I watched a video interview on Telegram with a guy who grew up with CERN from the time it started, and his theory is that they have taken Osiris's mummified head and are using it to reconstruct Biotech. Oh, that's some far out shit. I don't know about all that, but yeah, dude. Okay, maybe I will watch Westworld. Is it scary though? Because some of this stuff is like legitimately terrifying. Like, I cannot watch it. Okay, so right after I was in this rabbit hole, the next day, everybody was sending me more of Shonda's stories. Body to bring in the new tech archon. Yeah, I believe that. Thank you, Dustin. June 26th. June 26th is supposedly the first day of... Oh, no, I guess it's July 26th is usually what they say is the first day of Lionsgate or whatever. June 26th. Okay, nothing comes to mind off the top of my head when it comes to June 26th, but I'll have to look at the chart. They're using the DNA. Okay, so everybody sent me Shonda's stories the next day after my rabbit hole. And they're saying that, I also don't watch Stranger Things, so I cannot clarify this, but they're saying that in Stranger Things season 4, episode 8, that number 8 keeps popping up fucking everywhere. Through the Lionsgate, through Trump, through this crop circle we're about to look at here in a little bit, through like other sort of new age things like the human design, which we were going to dive into tonight, but I had to cut from the rabbit hole because it was too long. The number 8 seems to be significant. But Stranger Things season 4, episode 8, which is the latest season, it talks about the dam. And it talks about the barrier between worlds being like chiseled away at this location, at this dam. So it says here the chiseling always the barrier between our two worlds. And she goes on to say that this is kind of mind-blowing for a couple of reasons. She says Stranger Things isn't fiction, it's a documentary. I mean, it uses a lot of real shit. It's a ritual. I think it's a giant ritual. And 2, this is exactly why they say the Hoover Dam was built in the first place and what it was depicted to do in the Transformers movie. So if you guys remember in the last video, we dove into the Transformers a little bit and how in the Transformers movie, and I watched this movie too recently after this last video. In the Transformers, the first Transformers, they get taken by the government, like the main characters get taken by the government to Hoover Dam, which is a secret underground government facility. And they have, like the leader of the Decepticons, like frozen underground there. And he's been frozen for a long time, but he escapes. So this like leader of the AI overlords, right? The Decepticons, the artificial intelligence that have invaded the planet and the not good side, escapes from this underground facility at the Hoover Dam, just like the Andromeda strain escapes from an underground facility at the same location. And at CERN, they have an underground facility at the same location that's supposedly chiseling away between worlds, and they're doing the same thing apparently in Westworld, which is written by the same guy as the Andromeda strain. You can see how it's all connected, right? So some believe that this is Area 52, which is connected to Area 51 by underground tunnels underneath the Hoover Dam. And they depict this in the Transformers movie, and it's pretty apparent. This is also in 1932, like probably like wood cutting or drawing of a portal that is supposedly in that same location, the Hoover Dam Project portal. Something about before the flood. I don't know. Someone sent me this. It was from Shonda's, but I was like, oh, that seems significant somehow. Okay, so let's talk about Transformers and how they've been everywhere lately. In the first Transformers movie, the leader of the Decepticons was held underground at the Hoover Dam. We talked about that. Megatron. Okay. So we had... These are the dates, you guys, okay? We had a fire. We had this Centaurus strain named by the random guy on Twitter on July 1st. By July 4th, the exact day that CERN was launching, right as CERN was launching, the mainstream media started reporting on the Centaurus strain. It went viral on July 12th. On July 19th, this is all throughout the span of the Sirius alignment and the Lionsgate. Everything we're going to be talking about here tonight happened between the Sirius alignment in the beginning of July and the Lionsgate in the beginning of August. This giant dog days of summer ritual, right? We also had the Georgia Guidestones blow up on the 6th of July as well. Then on the 19th of July, we had the fire at the Hoover Dam, which was a transformer blowing up at the Hoover Dam on the 19th. From the 22nd to the 24th, there was a Masonic convention in Pasadena, which is strongly connected to the technological transhumanist mystery school groups through Caltech and all of these different Pasadena orders. So I started diving into this. I saw Tavis post about this over on Etheric Circle, and I was like, this sounds suspicious. I'm going to dive into it. And it's here in Pasadena. It's just a convention at the local lodge where they're selling tickets to it. But what I really zeroed in to was the symbolism. I wrote here, dude, it's so painfully obvious. Did someone say Transformers? This is taking place in Pasadena, which is a hotbed of mystery school activity, which is rooted very much in the tech world. Masonicon from July 22nd to July 24th. This is their imagery. You can see how it literally looks like a transformer with a Mason symbol on the forehead. Very rooted in technology and science and the artificial realm, and not the natural realm, right? I wrote here, you know, Steiner's probably rolling in his grave right now. This is what he really tried to warn us about. When I talk about this mystery school war, like, there have been many times where things have split off. In the 1800s, when we saw this, like, rise of Rosicrucianism, yet again, we've seen it in the 1600s as well, but this rise of Rosicrucianism, and then the advent of theosophy and anthroposophy, this was done by the mystery schools in order to combat this rise of scientific materialism that they saw happening. And this was done by those who are more rooted in the natural order. But even those orders have split since then, and theosophy has split in two, and there are warring factions within even entire factions. But Steiner very much warned us not only about the Masons. He has done long lectures on all of the problems within that order, but also about the rise of scientific materialism, transhumanism, and this incarnation of Ahriman that he called it. But he always spoke about the esoteric perversion that the Masons became, and so I'm sure he's more like, I told you so. I wrote here, a transformer blows up at a Masonic monument. In the last video, we discussed all about the symbolism of the Hoover Dam and how it is obviously a Masonic monument. So we have a transformer blow up at a Masonic monument on the 19th. A monument that the Transformers movie references right before this Masonic convention that uses the Transformer symbolism. Like, it's fucking obvious. And I wrote here, and here's CERN. CERN has entered the chat. So we're going to go look at a couple of videos to see what I'm talking about here. Okay, first of all, I want to point this out right here. This was Masonicon at the exact same lodge a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, and they used Jurassic Park symbolism. So they're leaning into that same author as the Andromeda strain and really harnessing movies. You can see them really harnessing Hollywood and these movie archetypes of ultimate destruction. You know what I mean? But this is from 4 years ago. This is the little teaser. It's nothing special, but what I want to zero in on is this video. Something with Shaq. Shaq is a Freemason. Oh, he's one of the ones who's loud about it. He'll just be like walking down the street in his fucking apron. He's just one of their little errand boys. But look at the eyes in this Deceptobot. And how they look very much like the CERN Hadron Collider. We'll look at some pictures here in a second, but I just want to show you guys this. This is their little video. like we're in a portal. Okay, I don't really care what Chuck has to say, but what I was really zeroing in on there is that portal in the beginning. We were like literally pulled through a portal like the Hadron Collider, which is part of this whole ritual. This is nothing special, that's just their little trailer, but I definitely wanted to lean in on this symbolism here, that being pulled back into the story. They're obviously a fan of his work. So I have a feeling he's probably a Mason, but like I said, he may be into like Skull and Bones or something like that too. And then I'm sure he's involved in, you know, like Crowley-esque OTO and whatnot. Okay. I'm trying to stay as organized here as I can. I feel like the Mercury in Virgo right now is making me the most organized I've ever been in my entire life. So I feel like we're going. 88% of you agree that this is suspicious as fuck, and 12% of you think they are just a fraternal order of esoteric dudes who are just chilling and having pancake breakfasts. And like the dudes at the lodge are. Those guys are nobodies. They're just paying their dues to get some perverted, twisted, esoteric jargon fed to them and have to do some very strange rituals and memorize a whole bunch of nonsense for nothing, to pay the way of the New World Order. It's not, the stuff at the top and the stuff at the lodge are two totally different things. So I guess you guys are both right, because yeah, some of them are just some fraternal dudes, of esoteric dudes chilling with their rose-colored glasses on as they help fund the New World Order. Okay, so I just said, do you see in his eyes the Large Hadron Collider? Like, it's pretty obvious, right? It's art, or just some other lame point. It's pretty apparent. If you watch that video, you obviously were, it's a portal. It's a portal. This is CERN. We'll look in the next slide how close those eyes look to images that come directly from CERN. This is another video, another movie, Transformers movie. I actually have not seen this one, but look at the symbolism here. We have this sort of, and I've noticed this. So there's a new Transformers movie coming out in 2023. It's called what's it called? Something about the beasts. I wrote it down. It's like Unleash the Beasts or something like that. And it takes place in Machu Picchu, and they're on top of the pyramid. In this one, you can see Stonehenge. It was literally released on June 21st on the solstice. So he said that Westworld was June 26th. That's very close to the solstice. I'm sure Westworld always airs on a certain day of the week, whether it be like Thursday or Monday. And that was probably the closest Thursday or Monday in June that they could get to the solstice point. But when two worlds collide, one survives. Suspicious. Okay, so I wrote here that I went to Eddie, because Eddie's like, his forte is like 80s cartoons, 80s toys, like he loves that stuff. So I was like, Eddie, my expert on 80s and 90s cartoons, seriously, that's his jam. He says that it looks, this image that they used looks like a mix. Like they mixed together the logos of the Autobots, the good guys, and the Decepticons, the bad guys, which honestly perfectly describes the Masons' persona. They masquerade as a philanthropic, fraternal order while selling the soul of humanity to the AI gods. Anyway, he went on to say that his eyes look like Megatron's, who is the leader of the bad guys, the one who's kept underneath Hoover Dam. I wrote, so that's fun. Look at these images. I think he's right. It tries to look more Autobot, but the Decepticon traits are there if you look close enough. Just like, I don't know, real life. So look at, you can see this is the image. You can see how it has like the pointed down triangle here, which we see very much displayed more here. And like the eyes look more like the Decepticons, but its general facial structure is meant to look more like the Autobots. I don't know if they put that much thought into it, but I sure did. These are his eyes. See how these circles are made up of dashes? They look almost exactly like the images from CERN. These are the images that come out of CERN after a CERN experiment. I don't know how to read these images. I have no idea what these images are showing us, but apparently this is the data that comes after a CERN experiment, and then somehow it's science. I have no idea. This is not my forte. But I am very familiar with these images because I've tried to like decode them. I'm like, is this astrological? How many dashes? And I've tried to figure out if there's some sort of code there. I haven't cracked it yet, but I definitely think that that is what they are referencing here with his eyes. Here we see them overlapped, but they are not always like that. I couldn't find the ones that look more like this, but they do exist. Okay, this is their little poster for Masonicon over in Pasadena, like the middle of last month. This is from their actual Instagram page. And I wrote here, they said, Masonry in the new millennium. That's their little catchphrase for the thing. And I wrote, Masonry in the new millennium is rooted in technology and has a very little to do with the original esoteric teachings that it sprouted from. But Masonry in general has had very little to do with the original esoteric teachings it sprouted from for a very long time. This is, you know, where all the guys went after they bought their ticket. They sat, they ate their dinner, they listened to some dudes talk about some Mason shit. And, you know, it is what it is. It was nothing too nefarious in and of itself. What I was leaning into here was the symbolism, which to me is extremely disturbing. I wrote here, for the record, this is just a bunch of local Masonic dudes who paid money to come sit in this lodge and hear some other Masonic dudes talk. I could probably gone to this if I wanted to. I think tickets were like $33, of course. I'm pretty sure even regular people could have gone to this. I don't think you even need to be a member of a lodge. I wrote, it's just a bunch of early degree guys, the dudes who are being initiated into the fluff and paying their dues like good brothers. It's nothing special. What I'm zeroing in on here is the symbolism that they chose, those in charge, that they chose for this event itself. The event itself is nothing to write home about. The ritual is in the symbolism. The message is in the symbolism. It always is. Just like they do, you know, rituals at the Olympics or at the Super Bowl. Like, the people at it are unwitting participants. They don't really know what they're participating in. It was the creators who created the symbolic archetypal expression that they are all now feeding by their very presence. That makes sense. Okay, I'm gonna check in with you guys really quick. Miko, Screams of Ahriman. Okay, wait, she's saying a whole bunch of stuff. Stranger Things. She says Westworld isn't scary. Okay, I'll give it a shot. She says she doesn't watch Stranger Things. That shit's too fucking scary. I couldn't get through the first episode, dude. I was like, I'm out. Yeah, I dove into human design. You might look at it differently after you see my breakdown. You can go check out my story highlights on my Instagram. I have a whole story highlight on human design. I just fell into that rabbit hole recently. Okay, everybody's saying the Order of the Eastern Star, yes. The stuff at the lodge is mostly a way to gamble. It's debauchery without their wives knowing. Yeah, it's just a whole bunch of nonsense. Drinking, talking, getting out of the house for dudes. It used to be more older dudes, but now they've really got an influx of like young guys. June 26th, 177 days into the year and 108 days left until the end of the year. Ooh, interesting. They like both those numbers, 7 and 8. Okay. So if this wasn't enough, you guys, the Transformer, okay, Georgia Guidestones blowing up, CERN being turned on, Centaurus being named, the fire at of the Transformer at the Hoover Dam, where the Transformers movie was at, this Transformer Masonic ritual. But then there was also a crop circle that popped up the last day of this ritual. That's what this is. It was a ritual. I mean, it was a dinner, but it's a ritual. The last day of this ritual, on the 24th, this crop circle popped up in Wiltshire, England. So one of our lovely Patreon members posted this in Discord, and they wrote, "Does this new crop cycle look like a freaking Mason symbol too?" And I was like, yes, it freaking does. I wrote here, so crop circles are one of my hyperfixations. I've done videos on them before, and if you scroll down on Patreon, you'll find them. I'm going to post, so I've decided that I'm going to start doing Flashback Fridays where I release old Patreon content on YouTube so that people can start to catch some of those old videos. But I wrote here, crop circles are one of my hyperfixations. I've like dove super deep into crop circles. I've watched everything ever done on crop circles, read tons of books. I'm slightly obsessed. Which is what I wrote here. I've read and watched a ridiculous amount of things on them. There are many, many crop circles that are faked, especially these days. There are even groups of guys that get together every summer to make them, often not detected by landowners and companies you can hire to make your specific design. And then there are the unexplainable ones, the ones with radiation, blown nodes on the stalks of the plants, and other measurable anomalies. Some are real and some are man-made. All of that to say, I think this one was made by humans. It showed up in a field yesterday. It showed up in a field on the 24th. And it's pretty apparent what this is. There is a compass, there is a square, there is 8 circles here, there are 8 spikes around here. So we see the 8, which we see play out, of course, with the Lionsgate. If you haven't watched my Lionsgate video, watch it down below. Giant fucking ritual. And then we see here 3 spheres. And I kind of look at this as like the 3 worlds, right? The upper world, the middle world, and the lower world being perhaps controlled by this specific square and compass, the specific configuration, not the creator of the universe, but this controlling, 8-sided star, Lindsay saw it, this controlling creator, this demiurgic figure and its minions, right, which we see play out with the Freemasonic order. So this popped up on the 24th, and it is highly suspicious to me. I then found it extra suspicious that a bunch of really big, like, symbolism pages on Instagram who, I mean, I'm not going to name names because I do like some of their work, but, you know, they work for Gaia, they work for all of these bigger named new age realm shenanigans and the powers that be in the mainstream spiritual realm. So they're definitely infiltrated. But this specific person spent weeks and weeks and did even like a whole live stream decoding how magical this symbol was, when they don't really do that with other crop circles. There are many that pop up every summer, much more beautiful than this, that this specific man did not feel the need to decode and speak about how special it was. But this one he spent days on, and people would be in the comment section talking about the Masonic symbolic reference obviously being made, and he would brush them all off and say, this symbol is Arcturian, and it was Arcturian long before the Masons got a hold of it. And I'm just like, I think you're really trying to get people to jump onto the symbol, and it's suspicious, and I don't like it. You guys know I trust no one. Okay, so is there anything else I want to say about the crop circle? Because I did write some things down. Okay, the number 8, obviously. 8, and like the 3 worlds, I think. I can't really come up with what these other 3 circles might be. The only thing I can really think of is like the 3 worlds. Above, so below, and us here, uniting in that in the middle. Yeah, Miko, if you can't find the Discord and join it, just send me a message somewhere on Instagram or whatever, and I'll send you a link. Yeah, absolutely does look like a Mason symbol. Okay. You guys, my notes don't make any fucking sense. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, we're gonna go watch this video. So after you guys know, I'm always in my own rabbit holes, but there are other people that do this, and they come to some of the same conclusions as me, and that always blows my mind. So we're gonna go look at this video here over on Instagram. Before we go, I just want to preference this with saying this is a very, very Christian podcast. And I do not agree with the majority of things that they have to say, but they are really good at piecing the puzzle together, like me, right? So it's called, their podcast and their channel is called Not So Secret Societies, and they did a really good job of tying together CERN, the Hoover Dam, all of the same things as I did. They didn't find all these other things, but they did a great job. So we're going to watch this here really quick.
Stones and Hoover Dam all go back to string.
Come on, can you go back? Okay. So she's tying it all together. Where's the sound? Okay, so she's saying they all tie to Stranger Things.
Yes! Why? Did you see the video I posted of Papa in Stranger Things talking about breaking the dam? Tell me more. Okay, he says the barrier of our worlds is, he has a pencil in his hand, is a concrete dam. And then he says the pressure builds, putting cracks in this dam until it breaks, merging these 2 worlds. And
this is letting the fallen ones in.
it is.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. I always talk about all it takes is a fracture for them to come to us, right? Something to annoy us. It allows that energy in because the fallen ones are like anger and these spirits that are oppressing us.
The fact that he says the dam breaks and there's a chiseling away at the barrier that exists between our 2 worlds. And then, and then remember the episode with the guidestones? 4 chimes, 4 deaths around the 4 walls of, and they filmed in Georgia.
The Menina Project, which looks like CERN, and then my theory that I think that they've got psychics at CERN, that they're doing like what they have 11 doing, help usher in these demons, just like Aleister Crowley did with the Amatraya working. He worked with a medium to bring Lamb in. And the revelation of the method, too, because we know that these Masons that are running the world are all about chaos magic and breaking things down and rebuild.
Here's something I thought was really interesting. All 3 events.
So, did not know that Stranger Things was filmed in Georgia. I actually recently dove into Georgia, and that's what we're going to dive into next, because I'm convinced it's some sort of like a battleground area for this New World Order war between mystery school streams that are kind of taking shots at each other. And so this is just a story that I wrote. I was like, dude, I think I accidentally figured out the ritual behind the guidestones. Wow, this rabbit hole took me all the way from Georgia to Atlantis. I'll be diving into this tomorrow on Patreon. And I did. I dove into it for the Leo new moon video, which I have linked below. We're going to touch on it a little bit here right now. But I wrote here, wow, I'm realizing now how perfectly timed my REM post was that day, because I had just posted REM lyrics, which is a band from the 90s from Athens, Georgia. One of my favorite bands of all time, the B-52s, is also from Athens, Georgia. And so I was like just kind of speechless that I didn't kind of tie these things together, but it was a map that triggered it for me. So let me just go here. This is from the video. This is what kind of started it all. This is the chart for the Leo new moon that we had on, I have no idea, July 28th. 2 days after that crop circle and the Masonic shit and everything like that. And, you know, we dove into all of this here in that video that's linked below. I'm not going to get into it, but what really, in Caltech, which is in Pasadena, which is rooted in space technology, nanotechnology, AI, atomic weaponry, nuclear weaponry, all of the things that are going to kill us, all of the different things that are going to kill us was involved in this as well. And Georgia, is this the one that had, okay, so I started diving into Georgia, right? I originally dove in thinking that there was going to be some goddess that I didn't know of that was named Georgia, right? That was not the case. I did find a couple of other things. The first thing I found is that there was a country called Georgia, and that it's in this area around the like Caucasus Mountains, which is the location that, you know, Noah is said to have rebuilt society after the flood, and is rooted very strongly in like the survivors of the Atlantean destruction, right? Turkey is believed to be that refuge for the survivors as well, whether it be Göbekli Tepe or the cave system there. And so I was like, okay, that's very interesting. It's connected to the Scythians and this sort of like ancient culture, right? And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then I looked over at the map of Georgia, which I had Googled, and the map was right there. And I was like, how have I not noticed this before? We have Georgia and we have Atlanta, Georgia here, which looks very much like Atlantis. This circle and these sort of canals coming. We'll see in the next thread. I actually found this at 3:33 a.m. I was diving in this rabbit hole. And I was like, okay, so not only do we have Atlanta, which is obviously named after Atlantis. He says he named it after the guy who discovered Georgia, says he named it after his daughter's middle name, but apparently there is absolutely no evidence that his daughter's middle name was actually Atlanta. There also is a goddess, Atlanta, that some people say that it's connected to, but it's obvious. It's obvious that it is connected to specifically Plato's story. So we have Atlantis here, we have Athens here, and then the Georgia guidestones are over here. In Plato's mythology, we have a war. Like what brought about the destruction of Atlantis was a war between the Athenians and the Atlanteans, where the Atlanteans lost. First they lost this war, and then after losing the war, there was the flood and the destruction. That's how Plato's dialogues go, right? And so this area already speaks to this sort of war between ideologies. We see it rooted here in the architecture. And then we have the Georgia guidestones here. So hold on really quick. I want to just discuss a couple of things. Okay. So the Georgia guidestones are often looked at as sort of like a New World Order monument, right? And I'm here to float the idea that that's not exactly what they were. Hold on. Okay, yeah, cool. Send the link. Okay, so, I lost it. Where's the chat? Okay, so it's pretty widely believed that the Georgia guidestones were built in the 80s. I mean, they were built in the 80s. That's not up for debate. by a Rosicrucian order. And there's a lot of symbolism in the name and whatnot that kind of leads people to believe that it was written by a Rosicrucian. It gets, I think, honestly, now, in hindsight, I think that this monument gets kind of a bad rap. So it was originally, its plaque and everything there says that this was built as a guideline for humanity to rebuild after some sort of destruction. In the 80s, everybody was thinking like nukes and shit like that, right? After some sort of like atomic nuclear destruction where we need to rebuild. These rules that we're going to read here in a second were kind of guidelines for humanity for after destruction. Not now, it's not about the depopulating people. These aren't guidelines to live by now. These are guidelines to live by after a destruction. And you guys know me. I am like as anarchist as you can get. I'm like, no masters, no rulers. But even I can get down with the majority of these things, especially in a post-apocalyptic world. So real quick, we're just going to read what is actually inscribed on this monument in multiple languages. These are the languages. It has 10 commandments to live by in the event that you need to rebuild. And as you can see while we read these are not the same commandments that the current New World Order agenda has in mind. They are actually the antithesis of what the New World Order has in mind. So it says here, 1, maintain humanity under 500 million that says million. In perpetual balance with nature. Is that supposed to say I guess so. 500 million. 500 million. In perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely. Improving fitness and diversity. You know, that has eugenics feel. People lean into that for that sort of like, this is a eugenics, this is rooted in the eugenics agenda, and it probably is, you know what I mean? But in the future, when we are trying to rebuild from some sort of destruction, too many people will require too many resources, and when we're trying to rebuild and live off the land and do things like that, some of these in that context make more sense, you know? Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. So the diversity speaks not so much to the eugenics, you know, diversity of people. Unite humanity with a living new language. It's kind of up for debate what that really means. Rule, passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. I mean, that sounds better than war, right? Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Balance personal rights with social duties. Prize truth, beauty, love, seeking in harmony with the infinite. Be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. So what I'm floating at here is that I believe that the Georgia Guidestones were erected by a Rosicrucian order that had split from this scientific materialist occult orders, right? And they erected this up. And it was taken down by this Masonic. It was done on literally the exact fucking moment that 15 minutes, it was off by 15 minutes of the exact moment that the sun aligned with Sirius, which is right on top of America's sun, and very strongly rooted in Freemasonry. I believe it was taken down by Masons as an act from one mystery school stream to another. So I wrote here, built by Rosicrucians, blown up by Masons in this sort of symbolic Athenian Atlantean war, where Georgia is some sort of battleground. We have Stranger Things being filmed there as well. I go very deep into this in this video, which is linked below. I touch on it a lot more on these sort of like symbolism and the Atlantean connection. If you want to go, start it, like you can fast forward all the way through the video to 2 hours, 35 minutes, and then hear me talk for this last little bit here, and I touch on this Georgia Atlantean mirror, okay? Because this was during the moon. I know I was like way in tune to this, so I'm sure I've said a bunch of things I'm not going to get to here, but this would be where you would go and watch that. It's linked below, okay? So I'm not saying I agree with all this shit, but I'm saying this is one mystery school stream and another mystery school stream kind of battling their ideologies on a world stage, right? This was erected in the 80s and it was taken down. It was erected on the equinox in the 80s. It was erected on a day of balance and harmony, and it was taken down at the moment the sun aligned with Sirius. I would put money on the fact it was the Masons. Okay. Okay, so we can see how the Atlantean symbolism is here, you know, especially Plato's Atlantis is said to be like a sphere and a circle inside of a circle, sometimes 3 circles. And when we zoom in, we can kind of see that. And it has these sort of canals, these sometimes 4 rivers, sometimes 6 rivers. Yeah, I think they have the 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's that hexagonal structure yet again. Those 6 rivers, these are roads, obviously, leading in. But when we see Atlantis, we can see it looking quite similar with these rivers leading in. I was diving into all the weird things that they believe, not the weird things, but all of the cool things that the Georgians in that culture over by Turkey believed. This was a slide from that other video. But then I was like looking at monuments in this area. So within Atlanta, we have a place called North Druid Hills. There's actually a South Druid Hills too. In the closest to the middle of the circle of Atlantis is a college, a technology college, and like very close to the middle there's this plaque made by a guy who is like battling against, where is it? I thought this was here. I thought I looked at it here. I thought it was here. It's not there. I don't know. He has like some war against like dark matter, no, gravity, against gravity. And so it's this plaque that's like an announcement by this one guy who's like announcing his like lifelong war with gravity because somehow his sister died by like something falling on her or something like that. So I find it interesting that they have this sort of plaque towards the middle. But I thought to myself, I was like, okay, I wonder, because you can see the Plato symbolism so strongly with the Atlanta, obviously Atlantis, right next to Athens, you know what I mean? This sort of mystery school playground with the Georgia guidestones and whatnot. And so I was like, I wonder if they have like a statue of Plato somewhere. And so I just typed in Plato, Georgia. I didn't find a statue, but there's a book written by Plato that is literally called Georgias. And it's like a dialogue between him and another philosopher by that name. And it's all about like semantics. It's all about rhetoric and language and like words. And I mean, I haven't read it, so I don't really know, but I read a lot about it over the last couple of days, over the last month. And I think that that's super interesting. Like, of course, I don't know, Georgia is somehow connected to Plato. Obviously, it's spelled differently, but, you know, like he's talking about in these dialogues, rhetoric has this sort of mysticism about it. Etymology is like archetypes. These things are connected and they have a sort of like quantum entanglement on the other side where they are reflected in systems. Like right here, we see it reflected in the land. You know what I mean? But yeah, okay. So I'm pretty sure the Georgia Guidestones being blown up was a stunt from one mystery school to another. As I do think other things are that we're going to touch on here as we go. Okay, so let me get rid of some of these things here. We'll be back to that. Okay, so before we get into some other things, I want to just kind of quickly point out that we can, this will probably be my next rabbit hole, that the space rituals are right around the corner. So this is a video from somebody over on Instagram or whatever, but she was just letting us know that we're going back to the moon. We're going back to the moon. Who knows what the fuck is going on? But supposedly NASA is going back to the moon on the 29th of this month, August 29th. There are 3 launch date possibilities, either the 29th, the September 2nd, or September 5th. So I guess we can keep an eye out for obvious space rituals. We've already had Russia withdraw from the International Space Station. They are building their own. China has already built their own. They are definitely prepping for a war in space. China has recently shot a missile directly into the moon. This is going to have spiritual consequences when they do Masonic rituals on top of the moon, like they supposedly did after the first lunar landing, if that did happen. And whatever is happening with any sort of secret space program shenanigans, we can expect to have space rituals happening before our eyes, and we will of course dive into those as we go. But these have I would expect these to have a sort of like higher significance than rituals done here on Earth, because here on Earth it's more in the body. The Earth represents our physical world, right? It represents more of our physical vessel, our physical energy. You know, they're feeding off our life force here. But when things are done in the as above, that is really affecting our consciousness. And each one of these spheres, particularly the moon, so rooted in the mother, so rooted in the goddess, so rooted in the feminine, they are trying so hard to sever us from. Rituals are very much going to be down on her surface. And so we are going to have to combat that any way we can. Knowing about it helps to already eliminate some of its power and give you the opportunity to, you know, practice protection, cast circles, do offensive type of magic, whether it be banishing, cord cutting, protection work, right? Apparently the rocket that is going to be launched to the moon is exactly 322 feet long. And I wrote here, this is an obvious connection to the Skull and Bones secret society that sprouted out of Yale, is rooted in Freemasonry, but definitely polarized more in dark occultism. Bush is a famous member of Skull and Bones. Okay, so a couple things came through when it comes to CERN. Hold on, is there anything I wanted to say about this? Because I did write stuff about space rituals. we'll get to that at the end. Okay, so you guys, I follow CERN and I just pay attention to the stuff they say and then I look into it. Okay, so the other day they were like, have you met Elena? And I was like, what the fuck is Elena? And they go on to say how CERN is mostly known for accelerating particles in like their Large Hadron Collider, but Elena is actually a particle decelerator that further decreases the energy of antiprotons coming from the antiproton decelerator. And then it says some sort of like scientific jargon, but it's improving the efficiency of antimatter experiments. And then they asked, do you know what ELENA stands for? So they say that ELENA stands for the extra low energy antiproton ring. But I know that they always use like acronyms that have double or triple meanings. And we've dove into, oh my gosh, so this must be what the dark journalist is always talking about in his chat when he says that the porn bots or whatever. I need to have somebody in here who can delete that stuff because I can't do it here right now. So lame. Okay, so I know they always use double, triple, multiple meanings. And so I was like, okay, what does this mean? It obviously means something in Latin or French or whatnot, right? So I looked it up in Latin, and of course it means shining light or bright one. And this is where I remind everybody that CERN is rooted in a light-based, yeah, we need a mod for sure. CERN is rooted in light-based occultism. They are trying to harness, they are trying to work with this antimatter, dark matter force, but they are very much polarized in the light. We talked about this in the CERN video. They only run during the light half of the year. They shut down during the dark half of the year. They are polarized in light-based occultism. As was Aleister Crowley. Like, people think he's like, oh, a dark occultist. He's a Satanist. He's doing all this stuff. And yeah, he was, invoking demons and like channeling Lamb and doing all this stuff. But his occultism, his esoteric lore is rooted in the light. It's rooted in harnessing your light and your will and using it to control and dominate your reality and the reality of those around you. Oh, you can report them? Cool. Miko, I might have to make you my mod. Okay. I think Sharon has the little mod thing, but she also has like a kid and a puppy, so she's always asleep. Okay, so what the heck? There should be a whole nother... there should be a whole another little thread of CERN things. It looks like I forgot to put them in here. Hold on, we're just going to do this because I know I probably uploaded. What happened? Undo. Okay, yeah, they're all right here. Okay. Okay, so I also started diving into CERN and its connection to music festivals. Give me a second, guys. Sorry, we're almost done. We're almost done with our slides. But I did want to kind of point this out here, and I just need a couple of slides to do it. I know this is probably not going to be even remotely in order, but whatever. We're just going to roll with it. You guys are like in the rabbit hole with me real time. So I don't know if you guys go to music festivals, whether it be Burning Man or Coachella or all of these ones that are in Europe that CERN seems to be at. whatever it may be, I don't know, but this is where I remind everybody, and I'm like a Debbie Downer. I know everybody loves to go like take a bunch of acid and dance to electronic music. It's a ritual, and it probably always has been. I mean, maybe it didn't start that way. I don't know, but it definitely is now. And you can see it with the symbolism played on the screens and the heavily electronic music and the drugs taken there. You know, we see that as a strong part of like the MK Ultra program, you know, lights, sounds, drugs, all mixed to psychoactive drugs, all mixed together with the goal of ultimate mind control, right? Okay, I think this is all of the stuff. Well, it's good enough for me to make my point. Okay. It's probably all out of order, but we're just going to go with it. Okay, so I seen this post that CERN had put in their stories. And they're like, music festivals are a given during the summer. But did you know physics came with the package? I wrote here, so I've said that festivals are energy harvesting rituals before. The images projected on the screen and sets used at these events are often very occult in origin, not to mention the frequencies used in the so-called music. Now I'm convinced I was right. This is CERN not only promoting them, but literally helping throw them. Apparently, Switzerland is full of these festivals every summer, during the same time that the Large Hadron Collider is running each year. This is the guy who does the music. He's a physicist at CERN, and he makes music with this machine used in physics experiments, and he takes the data from the CERN experiments and somehow turns it into music. And he calls it kaleidoscope music. I listened to some of it and it was like so awful. I was not going to post it here for you guys. I hate it. It's awful. This is from one of the festivals that CERN is at. I wrote here, Peep the Lion symbolism. It's during the start of the Lionsgate, which the New Age says starts at July 26th and goes to August 12th or something, with August 8th being the height of the Lionsgate. And so they have it here on the 28th through the 30th. The 30th being a high holiday on the Wheel of the Year. We'll get there in a second. I have a slide about that. So I went to the guy's Instagram. It says here, kaleidoscope, Large Hadron Collider oscilloscope music, CERN physics plus music plus test equipment. Warning, videos may trigger seizures for people with epilepsy, which means it's probably not good for any of us. I just said, yeah, no thanks. He says that this music is born from CERN particle physics. He takes the data and he turns it to music, and then people go do drugs and dance to it. This is from that same guy posting about the ritual, and they say that this is going to be wild. Lawrence Lee, musician and physicist at CERN, has built Kaleidoscope, which uses sound waves to visualize particle physics. Come and have your mind blown, no thanks, in a synthesis of music and physics. And it says here that there were like people dancing, females dressed as horses, and I just floated, were there 4 of them? Is it the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse? I tried to find pictures of the horse people, I couldn't. So I wrote here, this dude's page is super weird. The images and sounds give me like awful vibes. I did not vibe at all. I said I'm not going to post any of his music here. If you guys want to go check it out, you can go check it out. This is a quote about... This is a picture of his machine, and this was posted on August 22nd, 2020. And he put lyrics from a Bob Marley song, but he changed it. So what he wrote is, it's not all that glitters is gold. Half the story has never been told. So now you see the light. The next line is like about standing up for your rights, but he changes it. So the problem is in your fibers, which makes it sound like in order to see the light and align with the light of AI, you need to transition your human fibers in order to connect with it. It gives me like horrible transhumanist vibes. Like, I hate it. And I wrote here, wow, changing Bob Marley lyrics to fit the transhumanist agenda. Nice. I wrote, I also guess we aren't standing up for our rights anymore in this narrative, because he took that line completely out. This is a little thing about this guy's music. Listen to experimental music made from experimental physics. Music can be composed from more than just typical instruments. Lawrence Lee is a musician and physicist at CERN's Large Hadron Collider, and he has built this thing. And waveforms, we kind of said all this stuff before. You guys need to go to sleep, girls. I can't believe how many times they've come out of that room. So this is literally from CERN's website, on their own website, talking about the summer of festivals for CERN and all of the different ones that they're going to be at. But it looks like it got jumbled, so I think it's on the next slide. They literally have their own pavilion, a physics pavilion, where they're doing all these different physics experiments. And it's not just this guy, it's a ton of different people there. Converting vintage tech trash from physics experiments of the past into musical instruments. Come feel an intuitive connection with the mathematics and science of sound and music, all while learning about the physics of the Large Hadron Collider. Learn about the nature of sound waves and musical synthesizers and how far we can push the limits on sonic creativity. And I just was like, wow, no, thank you. Science and transhumanism is now a religion. People used to go do acid and dance to music naked as some sort of like spiritual experience, and they're doing the same thing, but now it's a spiritual scientific experience. This is from that CERN article here, where they're talking about the different festivals that they are going to be at, whether it's some in Denmark. They're all over. I had linked the website. It had scrolled, and there were multiple of them. So I was talking about the lion symbolism, and then I just broke down this day. I wrote here, it should be noted that July 31st, the last day of this physics festival, it should be noted that July 31st is one of our 8 points on the wheel of the year. It is Lammas, or first harvest. It's the midway point between the summer solstice, the peak of the light, and the autumn equinox, the moment of balance here in the northern hemisphere. So this is a very ritualistic day. It always has been. From there, we enter the dark half of the year. CERN is rooted in light-based occultism. They experiment during the light half of the year, and they shut down during the dark months. I talked about this in my live stream on the subject, which is also linked below, about how I think they might be planning some sort of announcement for this date. They didn't end up doing it. But this is a date that they have used in the past for significant announcements and experiments, and I talked about that in the video down below. This year, this day is even more significant because this is the day of the exact conjunction between Uranus, Mars, the asteroid CERN, and the North Node in Taurus. The end of July and the beginning of August is very intense, and it's rooted in high technology and futurism, or rather making said high technology and futurism physical due to the Taurus connection. And I think a lot of this was happening behind the scenes, and we don't even know the half of it yet. It also brings the energy of revolution and upsets in the areas of resources like money, food, water, etc. This is all happening during the time the New Age world is celebrating the Lionsgate, see the lion, And CERN is at this ritualistic festival with lion symbolism, playing creepy frequencies, all while the Large Hadron Collider is experimenting, and we have Mason symbolism happening with Transformers and the Dam and Stranger Things, and all of these things happening all at the same time. I wrote here that this is super suspicious. By the way, this is also my kid's birthday. It's also J.K. Rowling's birthday and Harry Potter's birthday, that Lammas First Harvest. I just wrote here, dude, stop going to festivals. This isn't new. As you can see, they've been doing this for several years now. This guy was playing this CERN music at festivals back in 2015. You can listen to the stream there if you want. They've been doing this for quite some time. We just need to be aware of it and stop partaking in mass energy harvesting events, no matter how fun they are. I mean, I'm sure this is fun. I've never been to a music festival. I was into punk music, so I was usually at a dive bar. Or maybe if it was like a band that was like older, from like 77, who still happens to be touring, maybe I saw them at like a larger venue, a slightly larger venue, but that was about it. I never was into big crowds, just small, violent crowds. Okay, so I wrote here, I can't be the only one who sees a huge problem with this. These are rituals. If you attend, your energy will be used to feed whatever spell they have tied to it. Not to mention the MK Ultra type programming that comes through music and visuals paired with massive amounts of psychedelics you probably just took. Okay, so the last thing I want to touch with is this like 8/8 ritual that happened with Trump. Okay. Ew, sounds horrible. Everybody's like, yeah, I'll make a mod for you, Miko. Thank you so much for saying that you will help. This is exactly what happens in the Dark Journalist chat. I know, I just heard them mention it the other day. I was like, what? I can't watch the Dark Journalist chat while I'm watching the video because there's so many people in his chat. And it's just like, bling, 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 bling. It's so distracting. So I never have the chat on, but I heard Olivia mention that apparently they come out late at night. King Solomon used demons to build his place. Yes, his ring, he used demons. Yes, he summoned demons. That's a cool rabbit hole to go down. Yeah, I've been in that one. Maybe I'll have to bring it back around. She says she's a DJ and she's been to Burning Man, so I've been to many music festivals. We do Lightworker festivals these days. Played Burning Man and many others. Ew, this sounds horrible. Yeah, aren't the kinds of festivals I go to or the kinds of musics we play. Dude, not surprised by any of this CERN crap. Kylie says, all of this is helping me know why. When I developed more intuition, I got weird vibes from so much. So interesting to see what was subtly picking up on, especially Freemasons and festivals. Yeah, the Masons are fucking everywhere, dude. Especially where I live. I live on the 33rd parallel. Like, they paid for every bench, literally everything around here. I used to be so obsessed with this band and thinking their music was like cool stories, but deep down I kind of sensed something weird. Totally sleepwalking programming music. Yeah, when I look back on a lot of the stuff I used to listen to, even a lot of like punk rock music, it's not the best. The lyrics are not the best. Okay, so you guys know I always kind of disappear on the 8th. I like have all my posts leading up to the Lionsgate, and then I kind of disappear on that day because I just cannot deal with the people anymore, dude. It's very intense. But I'm always around. I'll still be over on Discord. So in my Lionsgate post, in my Lionsgate video down below, I talked about Trump's connection to 8/8 through gematria, how he follows 8 people online, how the number 8 is very strongly connected to this like right to rule ritual, and how they have this sort of like war during this time over these rights to rule. You know, we see entire governments step down. Prime ministers step down, huge shifts happen, and these weird sort of power changeovers happen every year around this 8/8 holiday. At least it has been the last couple of years since I've been paying attention to it. Well, on 8/8, I'm sure you guys have heard, the FBI raided Trump, and so these were just my kind of posts zeroing in on that, and then I'm going to kind of touch on how this is part of this sort of mystery school war. So I just got back from a few days away from this space, meaning Instagram, and my DMs were full of people asking me if I heard about this because of my Lionsgate post talking about Trump. I also talked about Epstein and how he's like connected to the family who paid for the Lionsgate bridge, and of course like celebrities in general, and of course Lionsgate Entertainment and things like that. But I mentioned both Epstein and Trump in my post, and then I was like not really expecting them to surface for this particular 8/8, seeing as though Epstein is fucking dead, supposedly. And Trump is kind of like off doing his own thing. I didn't think they were going to be involved in this at all. That post was written 2 years ago when Trump was president. And so I didn't expect anything from it, but everybody was like, oh my gosh, look at this, look at this. So obviously we know Trump was raided by the FBI on 8/8, and I wrote here, I was wondering how Trump was going to play into all of this. And then I was like, apparently that 8/8 Trump is tied to Epstein somehow. I wrote here, the family that owns the Lionsgate Bridge, which is the Guinness family from the beer, is also connected to Epstein. The like heiress of the Guinness family is was wanted last year for questioning in the Epstein thing. She had flown on the Lolita Express more than anybody besides her, but Ghislaine and him, even more than her husband. So I had talked about how the Guinness family, the Lionsgate Bridge, is connected to Epstein in the video, and then also obviously I talked about Trump and how he's connected to 88. And apparently the Florida judge who signed off on the search warrant authorizing the FBI to raid former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort, which is unprecedented. Even during Watergate and all of these other scandals throughout time, including impeachments, no president was ever raided. They were always just asked to turn over any sort of documentation or anything like that. This is completely unprecedented. If you guys have followed me for a long time, you know I freaking hate this man, okay? I am not a fan of him, but I do kind of look at him through a different lens nowadays than I did before. But the judge that signed off on the raid for President Trump donated to Barack Obama in 2008. And then months after, he left the local U.S. Attorney's Office to represent employees of pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, who had received immunity in the long-running sex trafficking investigation of the financier. I also read somewhere that, like, these judges are not appointed by the president. They're, like, kind of voted in. And this guy was voted in during Trump's presidency, but, like, that vote still had to be approved by Trump. And so somehow Trump had something to do with this guy even getting this position. Like, he, like, okayed it somehow. Don't quote me on that. I read it somewhere. I don't remember where. I wrote here that the Dark Journalist is doing a fabulous job since this happened on the 8th. He's done multiple videos tying all into how Trump is so strongly connected to the UFO file through his uncle, John J. Trump, who got all of Tesla's paperwork and worked very, very much hand in hand with the FBI, and the UFO file, and how Trump is kind of in this sort of mystery school war. I've talked about this before. People think like Trump is not involved in the control system. And Trump is. He's just part of a different faction of the control system. You can look at just Trump Towers and the symbolism in Trump Towers, the 6x6x6 inverted pyramid, the 7 layers of the chakras, the mural to Apollo in the Fourier, that solar cult, the same deity that Hitler loved so much, who also has his name in gematria break down to 88. But Trump is very much rooted in occultism and the Kabbalah and things like that. And, we see this sort of like warring mystery school streams. And I am not as well versed on this as the dark journalist, but this is kind of how I see it play out. Okay, most of our presidents have been Masonic. Most of our presidents have been Masonic. Some of them have been Skull and Bones, which is just an offshoot of the Masons. Most of them have been Freemasons. And then we have a couple other ones that have come in that seem to be more rooted in what you would perhaps call like the Illuminati. You know what I mean? This is maybe even like Lincoln, who of course was killed and shot. Reagan, who was a actor turned president, he also was shot. He didn't die. JFK, who also is very rooted in that like Hollywood, through Maryland and things like that. And he is very much part of a control system, just not their control system, And he, of course, killed, shot so many of his other family. And then there's Trump, who was also in Hollywood and then became president. So it seems like they are probably more so aligned with what you would perhaps call like the Illuminati, while the other faction is more Masonic, and there's some sort of war. They've worked together for a very long time to a certain extent, but now there's a sort of like battle for control. The Dark Journalist did a really good job of talking about how, Kennedy did what he could to try to expose secret societies and bring the UFO file to light. And then after Kennedy's death, through Eisenhower and the presidents to follow, the UFO file was compartmentalized and taken out of the hands of the executive branch and the president and put into these extra constitutional agencies, whether it be the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, things we don't even know about. 3-letter agencies that do not follow our Constitution, sit outside the Constitution. And the Dark Journalist did a good job of explaining how Trump's creation of the Space Force, while it's a branch of the military and is preparing us for space war and all of these things that I'm very much against, it was a step towards taking the UFO file out of these hands of these agencies that are trying to suppress it and use it for a specific narrative, and put it into somebody else's hands who wants to tweak it and use it for a specific narrative. There are these two sort of warring factions. Many people think one is good and one is bad. I do not think either are good. I think we're stuck between these two. They're warring with each other and we're stuck in the middle. I just have like random notes that I was like writing down as things came to me, and I just want to make sure I said all these things. Said all that. Yeah. So check out the Dark Journalist's latest videos. He's done a really good job of diving into this whole Trump fiasco. This is gonna pop off, dude. I don't know what they're doing here with all of this. I don't know how much he is in on it. He may be very well in on the whole thing, or it may totally be an attack on him. I don't know. But this is really building up to the election later this year, the astrology later this year that piggybacks on that election, and the snapping that is happening on both the left, the extreme polarized left, and the extreme polarized right. People are about to lose their fucking minds. And this is some unprecedented territory. This was an 8-8 ritual. This infiltration of his house. You guys know I hate this man, especially if you followed me for a long time. I'm sure you are aware, but I can't believe the way that this all went down. And the Dark Journalist says that that's what they're looking for. Is they're looking for the UFO file. They're looking for these documents. They're looking for the stuff that's very strongly rooted in electromagnetism, which is what his uncle was a expert in, which is, you know, that Tesla technology that had its sort of original goals in mind, but has since morphed into this 5G infrastructure that we see being built before our eyes, and this sort of like electromagnetic war that we see playing out. And a lot of these documents probably revolve around that. We're actually going to read a book next month that dives into kind of the metaphysics behind physics and electromagnetism. So that should be fun. Okay, so I was going to dive into human design. I did a whole rabbit hole on human design in the stories. I'm not going to get to it here, but there is a story highlight over on my Instagram. So go and check that out. It'll probably be part of the next little rabbit hole stream that we have over here. But I just want to kind of end with reading this old post of mine from, I don't even know, probably like a year ago or 2 years ago. I have no idea. But I think it's something we all need to ask ourselves. But real quick, I'm going to check in with the chat before I read that. Dude, we all disappear on the 8th. Honestly, it's how I know people are real. If they talk about Lionsgate and especially channel about it, I can't take them seriously anymore. Yeah, I must have done a really good job of unfollowing people last year because I barely saw any of that in my... Well, to be fair, I wasn't actually on the internet on the 8th. But for the days leading up to it, I didn't see too much of it in my actual feed. Of course, my posts like triggered everybody and they all came over to argue with me, but you guys know. I kind of like to argue, so come at it. Let's have a debate. It's the Libra and me. We're good debaters. Okay, so unfortunately, people don't realize until they do, and it becomes painfully clear that there is more than one matrix. Just because you have woken up to the lies of the Muggle matrix does not mean that you aren't currently stuck in a spiritual one. The true awakening process is like an onion. We are constantly shedding layer upon layer of programming. Are you stuck in a dogmatic spiritual matrix? Are you unable or unwilling to question your current narrative? Are you following influencers that tell you what is true, or do you come to your own conclusions after pairing research with intuition? Don't feel bad if you are currently stuck in the quote new age cult. We have all been there to some extent at some point, and it definitely has its purpose. It gives us the rose-colored glasses we need to start to build our spiritual foundation. But there comes a time when those glasses must come off. There comes a time when the bird must leave the matrix and experience reality for itself. Word of advice: if it's popular and widely promoted in this realm, it's probably distorted or straight up nonsense. And the only way to work through these distortions and find sovereignty is to dive into the self and your personal soul's frequency. Pull away from the influencers. Find your own messages. Your higher self cannot transmit downloads of information to your soul if you are constantly being bombarded by others' versions of reality through YouTube videos and posts. If you are in this state, please pull away and find your own voice. This includes my work as well. For the voices of others can be deafening when trying to locate your own. Okay, I think I had a couple web pages up that I wanted to just touch on that I didn't get to. These and this, we talked about this. Make sure you guys go watch this video. If you haven't watched this one, this is like definitely the prerequisite. That's the moon we talked about. Potatoes, Georgia. Okay, so I wanted to kind of point this out. This is brought to my attention by a Patreon member as well. This is the Biotech company that is responsible for creating the monkeypox vaccine. And I think it's extremely interesting, their name, Bavarian Nordic. Their headquarters are in Denmark. So Bavaria is a city that's in present-day Germany. You guys have probably heard me talk about the Bavarian Illuminati and how it was like the origin point for this word that's now kind of used for a catch-all, as a catch-all term for like the powers that be. But it had this sort of origin point and originated in Germany. The Nordic connection, obviously this is in the Nordic countries, Denmark, Norway, up in that area, right? So it's pretty simple to see like, okay, that's probably what they're referencing with the Nordic part of the name. But in UFO lore and esoteric circles, the Nordics are believed to be an ET race from the Aldebaran star system that have been working with our world governments since probably about World War II. Who knows what went down in the past with past civilizations, but it's believed that they kind of came through very strongly through the Nazis and their channels, particularly the women of the Vril Society, who channeled these beings from Aldebaran. It's believed that that's how they got the blueprints for Hitler to create his UFO program. And then through Project Paperclip, our government and the Russian government then got those scientists, right? And these are Nordic ETs, and they're very rooted in, or it's believed that they are very rooted in eugenics, and this concept of like purity of race and purity of bloodline. I mean, you can easily say, the Nordic part of the name is just a reference to its geography, but I bet you it has a deeper esoteric significance as well. You can see in their symbolism how it looks like the Pleiades star cluster, which sits in the shoulder of the bull, with Aldebaran being the star that is the eye of the bull. And then the Bavarian connection is, pretty suspicious as well. I don't think it's smart to name a biotech company after a location rooted in such strong occultism, unless that's what you were trying to reference with your name. Right. And then, of course, being as though it's a biotech company, it's focused on not only vaccines and pharma creations like that, but it's rooted in technology. So nanotechnology, gene editing, that kind of thing. So, very suspicious. But that is the company that is creating the monkeypox vaccine. I don't know what I am in human design. All I know is I'm a projector. I don't know about the numbers or all that jazz. What else do I want to say? Okay, so we dove in one of the last videos, moon videos, that was like aligned with the asteroid Bavaria and a whole bunch of other things. And that moon, so the only people who are going to know what I'm talking about are Patreon followers, but I just want to say this here because I noticed it after. That moon was conjunct the asteroid Bavaria and making a whole bunch of aspects. One of them was to the asteroid Minerva. And I talked about how she is Athena and the goddess of war and wisdom, and Athena is used the archetype of Athena is used very strongly in Rosicrucianism. That which kind of sprouted through like Francis Bacon and things like that. They use Athena. They even say that that's where the name Shakespeare, which they say is actually Francis Bacon and Shakespeare didn't exist, came from, because Athena has her spear and she would shake it at her enemies or whatever. And it was a reference to Pallas Athena. And the Rosicrucians really lean in very strongly to her archetype. Well, the Bavarian Illuminati, all of their levels of initiation are based on the goddess Minerva. So that moon, which was aligned with Bavaria and Minerva, was very strongly aligned with this sort of like Illuminati archetypal expression. The initiation levels of the Bavarian Illuminati are like all named after Minerva. Like, I'm butchering this, and this is not what they're called, but like, for example, it's like Minerva Apprentice, Minerva Adept, like things like that, but it has a different terminology. So that's interesting. And the only people who are going to know what I'm talking about are my Patreon followers. All right, guys, I'm going to come check in with the chat, and then we'll call it a night. It's so hot in here. I'm, like, sweating so bad. Tall whites and Nordics. Yeah, she's got it. She knows what I'm talking about. We've definitely all been there to some extent, but it's about discernment. Oh, she's talking about the New Age. Yeah, we've all been there to some extent. It's all a little illusionary, especially when you're diving in to, like, learn what's true. Until you really absorb enough information, will you really realize how contradictory all of those dogmas are and how you can't take on any of them? Because how are you supposed to know which one is real? That's why you have to just kind of embrace the mystery and the puzzle. Look for like patterns and more ambiguous, symbolic, archetypal expressions, because everything is spoken through them and through the cosmos and the universe and our unconscious and our consciousness. It's spoken through symbols and archetypes. So the wisdom is coming through those, and also the fuckery. So we can read, if we understand this language of symbolism, we can sense the fuckery, we can read it, we can't really pin it down, like we don't really know what they're doing, but we can see there's some sort of ritual going on with Transformers and the Dam and Stranger Things and this and that. Like, I don't fucking know, but those things are connected somehow. How, I have no idea, but somehow, something there, it's all being connected in order to be used in some way. That's the most we can really know, right? And we can work to protect ourselves and remove ourselves from these sort of situations. But just constantly questioning everything, especially if it's dogmatic, especially if it's a fixed system that doesn't have room for questioning. Question it all. Mika says, yeah, it really comes from gaining lots and lots of knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. I've been doing this for over 20 years. Oh, wow, that's a really long time. She says that I'm still learning more and more. Yeah, for me, it's really only been since about 2018. Before that, I was just running amok. I've only really started diving into all this stuff since about 2018. But I've always been into all of these things. Like, all of my hobbies my whole life, now they make sense. Like, I was in a program in high school that focused on Greek mythology. You know what I mean? I was super obsessed with Harry Potter, which is, like, rooted in a lot of occultism. I had, like, all these weird little hobbies my whole life that now make a lot of sense because they were all leading me on to here, even my music tastes, the movies I was into, things like that. But, like, really diving in to, like, read and study all of this stuff really has only been since 2018. I feel like I've gone, like, a lot of places since then, so who knows where I'm going to be 20 years from now. Hopefully it's still sane. But who knows? Maybe the rabbit hole will take me. Okay, guys. Have a great night. We meet on... We meet over on Patreon on the 25th for the Virgo new moon. So if you want to come and join us for that, you can join Patreon for, like I said, as little as like $3 down below. Pay whatever you can. And you'll have access to all the videos. And we're going to meet on the 25th. And then next month, I might have another one of these rabbit hole videos. We'll see if anything comes through. If not, we are going to start reading, well, even if we do, we're going to start reading this very rare out-of-print book that kind of goes for like over $200. It's just a paperback book from like the 80s. It's not even really that old, or like the early 90s. that I'm almost done with. I have one chapter left. That is called The Sign of the Serpent, The Key to Creative Physics. And it's written through the lens of a metaphysical physicist. And it really does I can see why it's out of print. I can see why they are not printing it. It does a great job of explaining the philosophy behind a lot of these technologies, whether it be EMF technology, like experimental physics, so like CERN, 5G, and just the metaphysical undertones of the advanced technology that we're moving into. So we're going to dive into that. The books, we're going to dive into it. It connects like literally all our rabbit holes. Like Sharon, she is an acupuncturist. It dives all into acupuncture. It dives into like the embryo and birth, the symbol of the spiral, which is something I've been into, the symbol of the serpent and the swastika, which is also symbols I've been diving into, and I dive into in the Atlantis video down below. It kind of ties it all together, and then it gives this sort of like scientific lens that I am lacking. Even though I was into science well before I was into anything mystical, I was a huge skeptic and very rooted in the scientific mind. I majored in psychology, and I bring a lot of scientific discoveries into my astrology. You know, even the like astronomical theories behind, you know, the dynamics of a black hole and whatnot. I bring that all into my interpretations. I really do like to pair tangible scientific evidence with intuitive mystical insights into something sort of balanced, where I am like merging my left and my right hemispheres into something, you know? So I do dig this book. I dig it. I don't agree with everything he has to say, but I dig it. I think it was printed, I don't know, because the chapter I just read, he was like quoting scientific journals from like the late 80s. He was like 87, 88. So either it was written like the last couple years of the 80s or like early 90s. But yeah, the book it's like really expensive. I got it from Tavis, of course, over at Etheric Circle, where I get all my books. Give that man all my money. And he had it priced at like, I think like 200 something. And I commented on it and I was like, oh my gosh, I want this book, but I cannot spend $200 something on a paperback. Like, I cannot explain that to Eddie. Not that I usually have to explain my book purchases. He kind of lets me buy them now that I have shelves to put them on. And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot afford this, but I want this book. And so Sharon commented on there and she was like, oh, we should do a crowdfunding for you so that you can get this book. And so her and Amanda and a couple other people sent some money to my Venmo, and then Tavis took like 50% off, and I got it for like a lot cheaper. So I'm going to read it to all you guys because I feel like it was divinely came to me. Of course, it's all blurry. Jesus Christ. All right, guys. Have a great night. We will meet on the 25th over on Patreon to dive into the Virgo moon. And then next month, we'll dive into some more stuff. So have a great night, and I will see you later. Bye. Oh, wait. Elizabeth says, I'm new to Patreon. When you go live and I can't be there for the live, am I able to catch the video? I had a hard time finding your last love on it. Yes, Elizabeth. So, hold on. Can you please focus? Sometimes that works. Okay, it's not gonna work. Elizabeth, yes, all of the videos are saved for replay. So I go live at like 9 o'clock at night Pacific Standard Time. So especially if you are in the East Coast, like it's super late. So I usually try to do them a couple of days before the moon. So we will be meeting on the 25th and the moon is on the 27th. So I always try to do it a couple of days beforehand so that there's time to watch at like a decent hour and not like a vampire hour like me. And they all are saved for eternity. They're in there. You had trouble finding it in Patreon? Let me know if you need me to send you a link or something. Patreon was doing that to people for a while. Sharon's was not able to get her links even though like her payment was going through. The things weren't showing up. So I don't really know if that's like a Patreon thing. She says she's in Central Time. Thanks, I'm sure you can figure it out. Yeah, you should get an email every time I post a video on Patreon. You should get an email with a link. And then if you download the app, the Patreon app, you can get the direct links through there. And then you always want to open the video through YouTube. So don't watch it in Patreon or you won't be able to see the chat. You have to like click the link that I put in the description and go over to YouTube and watch it there. And then that's better. Okay, I saw one last thing up here about Christianity. What did she say? She said, Mika says, I started knee-deep raised in Eastern Orthodox Christianity and obsessed with esoteric fantasy and sci-fi, so I totally get it. Yeah, that was like all the stuff that I was into too, but I still didn't really believe it. I just thought it was all fantasy, right? She said she studied Christianity in such depth, including ancient texts and church fathers, until I learned too much to stay religious. LOL, yeah. All right, guys. Oh, you didn't see an email. Did you see it in the app? Send me a message over on Discord. We'll figure it out. Have a nice night, guys, and I will see you next week. Bye.